The email wasn't the worst thing I found that afternoon. It was the second attachment. I almost didn't open it. I'd only gone into my daughter's shared Google Drive folder because she'd asked me to review the floor plan for the new house. "Just tell me what you think, Mom. You have such good taste." And I wanted to see it before our dinner that Friday. I clicked the wrong file. A spreadsheet opened, and I sat there at my kitchen table in Naperville for a long moment, reading the same column of numbers 3 times. Then I made myself a second cup of coffee, closed the laptop, and thought about what kind of mother I wanted to be at dinner on Friday. I should give you some context, because this didn't come out of nowhere. Nothing ever does. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a senior underwriter at a regional insurance company outside Chicago, the kind of career where you learn early that the numbers don't lie even when people do. I retired 18 months ago on my own terms with a pension, a 401(n). I'd been feeding since I was 27 and no debt. My name is my own business, but people at work used to call me the woman who never co-signed anything she didn't read 6 times. That was a compliment. My husband passed 8 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, fast and terrible the way it usually is. We had 30 years together, and I won't pretend the last 5 haven't been quieter than I'd like. But I built a life. I have my garden. I have my book club. I volunteer 2 mornings a week at the elementary school near my house, helping 2nd graders with reading. I am not lonely in the way people assume a widow must be. I have 2 children. My son lives in Portland and calls every Sunday like clockwork. This story is not about him. This story is about my daughter. She's 34. She married her husband, a man I'll call my son-in-law, 6 years ago at a vineyard in the hill country outside Austin that cost what I now know was $38,000, half of which her father and I paid as a wedding gift. They seemed happy. They seemed responsible. My son-in-law does something in tech sales. Enterprise software. He explained to me once at length, and I retained none of it, and my daughter had a good position managing operations at a mid-size logistics company. Together, on paper, they were fine. They moved to a suburb north of Dallas 3 years ago when his company relocated. Nice area. Good school district, which seemed to matter to them even before they had a child. They bought a house I thought was a little large for 2 people, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a kitchen with an island, the size of my entire dining room. But they were happy, and it wasn't my money, so I said nothing. Then my granddaughter was born 22 months ago. Pearl. She has her grandfather's eyes and a laugh that could fix most things that are wrong with the world. I flew down for the birth, stayed 3 weeks, flew back up and cried the whole first hour of the flight home because I missed her before I'd even landed. I visited 4 more times in Pearl's first year. Flew down for Thanksgiving, Christmas, her first birthday, drove down once in the spring just because I could. Each time I noticed small things I didn't say out loud. A new sectional sofa that hadn't been there before, a second SUV in the driveway, my son-in-law mentioning a golf membership at a club in Frisco, like it was nothing. My daughter had gone back to work part-time, 3 days a week, and they had Pearl in a daycare center near their house the other 2 days. I didn't ask questions. They were adults. It wasn't my money. That changed in February. My daughter called on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual. We usually texted and saved calls for weekends. She said she and my son-in-law wanted to come up to see me, just the 2 of them, a quick trip to talk about something. Without Pearl, which was also unusual, I asked if everything was all right. She said everything was great, actually. They had some exciting news. They just wanted to sit down in person. They came up on a Saturday. I made pot roast because it's my son-in-law's favorite, and I am, at my core, a woman who feeds people when she's nervous. They arrived mid-afternoon, and we ate early, and the conversation was easy the way it is when you're all waiting for something. After dinner, my son-in-law cleared the plates. A good sign, I thought. He was being careful. And my daughter pulled out her iPad and set it on the table, facing me like she was about to give a presentation, which, I would come to understand, she was. "So, Mom," she said, "we've been doing a lot of thinking." They wanted to refinance their house. I nodded. Interest rates had come down some, made sense. They wanted to pull equity out with the refinance to consolidate some debt and do a kitchen renovation. I kept nodding. They needed a co-signer because their debt-to-income ratio was higher than the lender wanted. I stopped nodding. "We've talked to the mortgage broker," my son-in-law said, "and with your pension plus your retirement income, it's a very clean file. They basically just need your name on it." Just your name. That phrase. I have heard it before, and it has never once meant what it sounds like. I asked how much the refinance was for. They told me. It was $420,000. I kept my face very still. I have been doing that since 1987, when a claimant tried to convince me a boat fire was accidental, and I had to sit across from him for 40 minutes pretending I wasn't already certain. It wasn't. Then my daughter said, "And Mom, we've been thinking, this might actually be a really good time for you to come down to Dallas." I looked at her. "Permanently," my son-in-law said, "or, semi-permanently. We have the guest suite. Pearl would love having you there." My daughter reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "We just think it would be so good for everyone. Pearl is at such a magical age, and daycare is so expensive, and honestly, Mom, you've been up here alone for 2 years and we worry." "How much is daycare?" I asked. She blinked. "What? Pearl's daycare? How much a month?" $2,200, my son-in-law said, "for 2 days a week. It's insane." I did that math quietly. $2,200 for 2 days a week. That was $1,100 per day of childcare. I had retired from a 30-year career in financial risk, and even I thought that number deserved a second look. "So you'd like me to move to Dallas," I said. "Co-sign a $420,000 mortgage, and watch Pearl and just be there," my daughter said. "Be part of her life. It's not like we're asking you to work." My son-in-law nodded. "You'd have your own space. Full guest suite, private bathroom. We'd obviously cover all your costs down there." I asked what cover your costs meant, specifically. There was a small pause. "Room and board," he said. "Everything. You wouldn't need anything." What I noticed was that he didn't say a number. I told them I needed to think about it, that it was a lot to absorb, and that I appreciated them coming up. My daughter hugged me for a long time at the door. After they left, I sat in my kitchen and looked at the pot roast pan, soaking in the sink, and I thought, something is wrong with this picture. I couldn't name it yet. But 31 years of reading files had given me a very reliable instinct for when a story had a missing page. That's when I thought about the Google Drive folder. She'd shared it with me 8 months earlier so I could see photos of Pearl without her having to text them individually. I'd been in it a dozen times for pictures, but I'd never looked at any of the other folders. I want to be honest about this. I didn't go looking for something wrong. I went looking for the floor plan because that's what I'd been asked to look at, and I wanted to see how big the guest suite actually was before I let myself imagine living in it. The spreadsheet opened. It was a household budget. My daughter's handwriting, basically, organized the way she'd always organized things, color-coded, neat. Income across the top, expenses below, and there, halfway down the expenses column, between auto insurance and groceries, was a line item that said Mom C. Mom C. My daughter-in-law's mother. I'll call her my son-in-law's mother because that's who she was. $1,800 a month. I scrolled right. The notes column said, Tues-Thurs, childcare plus pickup. 2 days a week. $1,800 a month for 2 days a week. And my daughter had just sat across from my pot roast and told me that daycare was $2,200 a month and so expensive, and wouldn't it be wonderful if I came to live with them and be part of Pearl's life, and it's not like we're asking you to work. I closed the laptop. I sat there for a while. I am not a woman who cries easily, but I want to be honest. My eyes stung. Not because of the money, because of the math. Because I had sat at that table, and my daughter had held my hand and talked about how Pearl would love having me there, and the whole time there was a spreadsheet in a shared folder with a line item that told me exactly what my presence was worth to them. And it was less than they were already paying someone else to do the same thing. She had not offered me $1,800 a month. She had not offered me anything. Room and board. A guest suite. The privilege of being useful. I thought about my husband, who would have known what to say immediately and said it without raising his voice. I thought about what he used to tell me when I'd get a file that didn't add up. Don't react. Understand first. Then decide. So I spent the next week understanding. I made some calls, not to my daughter. I wasn't ready for that conversation, but to my own mortgage broker, a woman I'd worked with twice before, who agreed to pull comps on what a cosigner on a $420,000 refinance would actually be taking on. She called me back 2 days later. She walked me through it. If my daughter and her husband defaulted, I would be on the hook for the full balance. My pension could be garnished. My own house, paid off in full, my name only, could be at risk. It's not just your name, she said. It's your net worth. I also talked to my financial advisor, who'd managed my retirement account since I left my job. I told him I was considering co-signing and asked him to model out a scenario where I lost the income I'd saved. He was quiet for a moment. I'd want to see their full financial picture before I told you to do that, he said. Can you get me their bank statements? I couldn't. But I had that spreadsheet. I went back to it. Carefully this time, the way I used to review claims, not looking for a conclusion, looking for the whole story. The income line was $310,000 combined. Good money, genuinely good money by any standard I know. My son-in-law's base plus commission, my daughter's part-time salary. The expenses told a different story. $900 a month. That was before the refinance. 2 car payments, $140 combined, both leased, both current model year. Golf membership, $475 a month. Something listed as WF Club dues. 3 had to look that one up. A wine and food membership at a private dining club in Plano. Subscription line I had to read twice. A weekly meal kit delivery plus a premium grocery delivery service, combined $890 a month. Momsy Thurs, $1,800. Daycare Mon, $880. One day, at a different facility, a Montessori-adjacent program, what I did not see anywhere on that spreadsheet, a $529 for Pearl. Any retirement contribution beyond what was auto-enrolled at a very low percentage. Any savings line at all. What I saw was a family making $310,000 a year and spending it the way people spend money when they believe the future is someone else's problem. And I was, apparently, the future. I called my son in Portland that weekend. I did not tell him everything, but I told him enough. He said, "Mom, just tell them no." Just like that. He said it the way people say things when they have always had clear boundaries, and they forget that other people have to learn that. I had been learning it for 63 years. I was getting there. I booked a flight to Dallas. I did not tell my daughter I was coming to give her an answer. I told her I wanted to come see Pearl and spend a long weekend, and that we could talk. Which was true. I did want to see Pearl, and we were going to talk. I flew down on a Thursday. My daughter picked me up from the airport, Pearl in the back seat in her car seat, and the minute I buckled in, I reached back and held that little girl's hand and thought, whatever I'm about to do, I'm doing it for her too. Kids don't need grandmothers who resent the room they're living in. They need grandmothers who chose to be there. Friday, we kept easy. I played with Pearl all morning. We went to the park in the afternoon, and I watched my son-in-law come home from work at 6:30 in a car that I now knew cost $640 a month to lease. Saturday evening, after Pearl was in bed, we sat down. My daughter had lit candles. There was wine open. She'd made the kind of effort that tells you someone is hoping for a particular outcome. I had brought a folder, not a dramatic folder, just the manila kind, from the office supply section at Walgreens. Inside it, I had printed 4 things: the mortgage broker's assessment, my financial advisor's written summary, a 1-page document I had put together myself showing their income versus expenses from the spreadsheet, and a single sheet with 2 questions I wanted answered before we talked about anything else. I set it on the coffee table and I said, "Before we get into the house, I want to ask you something." My son-in-law looked at the folder the way people look at things they weren't expecting to see. "I was in your Google Drive folder," I said, "getting the floor plan you asked me to look at. I opened the wrong file. I want to be straightforward with you about that." My daughter went very still. "I saw the budget spreadsheet," I said. "The full one." Nobody said anything. I want to ask about the line item for your mom, I said to my son-in-law. The $1,800 a month for Tuesdays and Thursdays. The silence that followed was the particular kind that has a lot of words in it. My son-in-law looked at his wife. My daughter looked at the candle. That's a private arrangement, she said finally. I understand, I said. And what I want to understand is how the arrangement you're proposing for me is different. It's completely different, Mom. You'd be family. She's also family, I said. She's Pearl's grandmother, too. More silence. We pay her because she asked to be paid, my son-in-law said. That was her choice. And what was your ask of me exactly? I said, room and board. I kept my voice very even. I want you to think about what it means that I found out what my contribution was worth by reading a spreadsheet I wasn't supposed to see. My daughter's eyes were wet. Mom, I didn't think you'd want. I need you to hear what I'm saying, I said. Not what you thought I'd want, what you actually communicated to me. I opened the folder. Your other grandmother asked to be paid. And you paid her. Without question, apparently. I didn't ask, so you assumed I was free. I put the income and expenses page on the coffee table, faced it toward them. I put this together from the spreadsheet, I said. I'm not going to pretend I didn't look at it. You make $310,000 a year. That is real money. That is more than I ever made at the peak of my career. My son-in-law's jaw tightened. And there is no savings line, I said. There's no 529 for Pearl. The retirement contributions are at 4%, which is barely enough to get the employer match. I tapped the page. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying this because you've asked me to put my name and my financial security on a $420,000 loan for a family that has no financial cushion. And the plan for what happens if something goes wrong is apparently me. My daughter said very quietly, "That's not fair." "What part?" She didn't answer. I pulled out the mortgage broker's letter. "This is from my broker," I said. "She explains what co-signing this refinance actually means. It means if you default, they come for my pension, for my house. I am 63 years old. I have no income now. What I have is what I saved. There is no recovering from a loss like that at my age." My son-in-law started to say something about how they weren't going to default. "I know you believe that," I said, "and I hope you're right. But people who are going to default never believe they are. I reviewed insurance claims for 31 years. I know how that sentence sounds from the other side of a table." The candles had burned down some, the wine I hadn't touched. "I'm not going to co-sign the refinance," I said. "I want to be clear about that tonight so we can stop carrying the conversation around it." My daughter looked at the table. "And I'm not going to move to Dallas," I said. "At least not like this, not as a solution to a budget problem." My son-in-law stood up and walked to the kitchen. That was fine. People need to move when things are hard. My daughter said, "So, what are you saying? You just won't help us." "I'm saying the help you need isn't me moving in," I said. "The help you need is looking at this page and deciding what actually matters." I tapped the expenses summary. The golf membership and the wine club and the meal kits, those are choices. Daycare is real and it's expensive, and I know that. But you are spending almost $12,000 a year on lifestyle memberships when you don't have a dollar saved for your daughter's education. "You sound like a banker," she said, not kindly. "I was an underwriter," I said. "Close enough," she cried. I let her. I didn't move across the couch to hold her because I didn't trust myself. Not because I didn't love her, but because I knew if I held her right then, I would soften something that needed to stay firm. I have made that mistake before. Mothers do. My son-in-law came back from the kitchen. He sat down. His face had done something in the kitchen. Whatever it does, when a man decides to stop being defensive and start being honest. "I didn't realize how it would look," he said. "The arrangement with my mom. I genuinely didn't think about it that way." "I believe you," I said. "That's the part that worries me more than if you'd done it on purpose." He nodded. Slowly. "The refinance isn't just about the kitchen," he said after a moment. "We have a line of credit that's resetting in August. The rate's going to jump, and we can't carry it." "I know," I said. "It's on the spreadsheet." He let out a long breath. "We kind of got ahead of ourselves." "Yeah," I said. "You did. We sat there a while, Pearl made a small sound from down the hall. Not awake, just one of those noises babies make in the middle of their sleep, checking in with the world. All three of us looked toward the hallway. And I thought, that's the whole point. That little sound. That's what this is all for. I'll tell you what I will do, I said. I'll come down more. Voluntarily. Because I want to. Not because you need me to. I'll take Pearl on the days I'm here and I will not track the hours or send you an invoice. That's a gift. A real one. My daughter wiped her face. And if you want to sit down with a financial advisor, a real one, not someone trying to sell you a product, I'll pay for the first 3 sessions. As a gift, because I think you're smart people who built some bad habits, and I think you can fix it. What about the refinance? My son-in-law asked. Talk to your broker about doing it without a cosigner, I said. Reduce the cash-out amount. It might mean the kitchen has to wait. He nodded again. It was a different kind of nod than he'd been doing at dinner 2 weeks earlier. I flew home Sunday evening. Pearl cried when I left, which Pearl does every time, and my daughter held her at the door, and they both waved, and I made myself not look back after I turned the corner because I have learned the hard way that some goodbyes are easier when you keep walking. On the plane, I sat in the window seat and watched Chicago come up out of the dark below me. All those lights, the lake flat and black to the east, and I thought about the spreadsheet. I thought about how strange it is that a column of numbers can tell you more about what someone believes than anything they'd say to your face. Not because the numbers are mean, just because they're honest. My son-in-law's mother never asked me whether she should charge for childcare. I never asked her anything. I don't know her well. She lives in Scottsdale. She's younger than me. She apparently has a standing arrangement that works for her and works for them. Good for her. She knew what she was worth, and she said so, and they paid it without blinking. I had walked into that dinner with my pot roast and my goodwill, and assumed that being the kind of mother who doesn't ask for things was a virtue. I'm rethinking that. You can love your family completely and still know what your name is worth. You can want to be needed and still refuse to be used. You can be the grandmother who shows up for everything that matters and still not be the grandmother who signs the mortgage. These things are not in conflict. I spent 63 years thinking they might be. I was wrong. My daughter called me 3 days after I got home. She'd made an appointment with a financial planner. She said the words, "We have some things to figure out," in a way that sounded like she meant them. She didn't mention the refinance. I didn't either. She asked if I'd come down in April for Pearl's 2nd birthday. I said I wouldn't miss it, and I meant that too.